of national freeway, more especially in 2021, the Ministry of Transport, working with the Interministerial Committee, led by the Department of Labour, created a separate task team that focused specifically on the transport aspects of the trucking and freight industry grievances. This approach enabled for a broad, inclusive platform where all stakeholders can come together to ventilate their issues and find solutions, including the other social partners in the truck industry who are not part of the bargaining council. Since December 2021, the task team has been hard at work, and as a result, on 6 May 2022, the task team adopted an action plan. And I'm happy to announce to you today that in the next coming 2 weeks, we should sign an agreement with the truck drivers and the truck industry, in particular in business that participate on the action plan. It has been a difficult journey for us, but nonetheless, we have come to that point. And that is why you have seen the decrease in terms of strikes and the blockage of the road. And that is indeed for us good news, and it will be good news for business in our country. With regard to the disaster, we briefly, Mr. President and the business here came in KwaZulu-Natal, and we made our own assessment working with different districts and municipalities in the province. And that resulted also in the immediate action plan that we're implementing in terms of the affected areas N2, N3, and our immediate intervention for relief included suspension of toll fees to allow a bypass, particularly also in areas where you've got bigger challenges in terms of the road infrastructure. We have intervened decisively, working with our different partners. And of course, we have appointed SANRAL to be the lead department in relation to this, to enable work to continue in terms of scoping and deploying appropriate resources for immediate relief. Some of the infrastructure that has been damaged will take us a longer period, and I will be able, if there was time, to detail that for the chamber. But we do have our report which we will circulate for you, and we are open for engagement from now onwards. And I think this meeting has been an important meeting for us, particularly zooming in on the eThekwini, to continue to work with you. Of course, the funding model for the road infrastructure is a bigger question we are grappling with in relation to Mr. Gumede. You know that SANRAL balance sheet has been affected by the impasse in relation to the e-tolls in the country. Once we resolve that particular matter, which will be before Cabinet very soon, we think that we should be in a position to unlock what we need to do in relation to the funding of the road infrastructure in the country in the long term. So the decision is imminent, and I'm saying it before my boss here, the President, is going to be taken, because we are agreed in conclusion with the Minister of Finance in relation to what needs to be done. So once that is concluded, we will be in a position to have a brighter future in relation to the future of funding model for road infrastructure in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Balula, for that input. And let me be we're not expecting detailed presentations from our ministers. We just want them to give us a sense of their involvement and assurance that you also being seized with the challenges of the disaster. In response to my invitation for those who wanted to raise any issues, because we're not going to have a Q&A, if President and Mr. Gavin Stradum says that he has 7 billion rand worth of investment that's held up due to sanitation incapacity of the sewer treatment plants. He's ready to roll. He accepts this. Thanks government for the promise that it will be attended to. However, he says he's not hearing that we're going to build bigger plants to cope with the expected growth in the economy. And that is what he would like to hear a response to. I'm not sure, can we then invite Minister Gordon to, you want to do it from there, that's fine. We'll take Minister Gordon, then Minister Mkunu, and then Minister Dlamini Zuma.
Well, good morning, Mr. President, Premier, Mayor, and all other distinguished guests. Let me see if I can be very brief. As far as the port itself is concerned, by the 13th of April, Mr. President, the port had begun to function already. The major problem is what was mentioned earlier on. Durban and eThekwini has a number of canals and culverts which bring in wastewater and therefore debris into the harbor area. So the harbor had to be dredged, cleaned up, and then the shipping began to come in. The second big issue is access to the harbor and the Bayhead Road. The Transnet colleagues did extremely well by turning 2 lanes on the exit from the port into an entry and exit lane. There's a 3rd lane available now. The 4th lane will be available at the end of May, and an alternate route sometime in June. So access into and out of the port is working very well. As far as terminals are concerned, all of them, both the private sector ones and the public Transnet-owned ones, are fully functional at 100%. The fuel issue has been pretty much in the news at the moment, but a whole lot of arrangements are being made by Transnet, including taking jet fuel through 2 routes. One is through the pipeline, which will happen in the next week or so, and the second is via Richards Bay and, if need be, via Mpumalanga, so that it can reach our Tambo Airport. The major issue is the rail issue. The northern line, which extends between eThekwini and Richards Bay, has been fully restored, so that's functional. The southern line, going towards Port Shepstone, there's a bridge near Ilovo that has collapsed. So Minister Mbalula and I had a brief chat. Transnet engineers say they can put it together in the next 6 months, and we'll work together to get that done. And the third line, which is the important one, from eThekwini to Gauteng, has 11 major, what I call Category 1 issues where embankments have totally collapsed and so on. But what Transnet Rail is doing at the moment is to get a mixture of passage through either the so-called right-hand lane or the left-hand lane, so that there's some passageway between eThekwini and Cato Ridge for a start, where the major interruptions are actually occurring. So both on the import side and the export side, I think all sorts of contingent arrangements have been made with trade to enable, for example, the auto sector and other sectors to actually operate effectively. The citrus export season is coming up in the next week or 2, and special arrangements have been made in that particular regard as well. Finally, in relation to Eskom, Eskom has extended its hand to assist, both in respect of eThekwini, where no load shedding has been happening since the floods, and Ugu, Ilembe, and Ray in Yokeni municipalities have been assisted, particularly with water and sanitation pumps and other faults that they needed to be repaired. The rail repairs themselves will cost in the order of about 2 billion rands, and the total of what I'm talking about could be anything between 4 and 6 billion rands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. Minister Mkunu, you're welcome to do it from there.
Good morning, Program Director, Mr. Pillay. My greetings to His Excellency, the President, and Premier, and, and the Mayor. Just briefly, KZN as a whole, like any other province in the country, does present a challenge on water and consequently sanitation, especially if you look at it in the context of supply and demand. So there's a clear question that say, are we supplying in accordance, or is our supply of water matching the demand? I would say to you, no. But quickly remind you that that has to do with water services. If you ask the same question and you direct it in terms of availability of water, I would say, well, a little bit better off in terms of availability of water. But the problem is how do we manage, and how have we managed over time that water that is available to meet the demand in terms of supply. My assessment is that we're more of a challenge in terms of managing supply than a challenge of availing water. Both are challenges, but there is more, water services are more of a challenge. That's the first statement. Second one is to say that in terms of availability of water, we should be completing our project of augmenting water for eThekwini and Umgungundlovu in particular, and the other surrounding districts, at least by 2027, 2028. And that is Umkomazi Water Project. But this, I should add that we've raised the wall of Hazelmere, that is Hazelmere Dam. It's about to be completed, which is going to help, particularly in the north. I particularly went there to see the work that is being done, and I'm satisfied that we're on course. Other than that, we need to go down to the drawing board in terms of services. And the eThekwini municipality is a water services authority. And the challenges that you were talking to, Mr. O'Connor, relate in the main to eThekwini municipality more than to the Department of Water and Sanitation National. But we're not detaching ourselves from working together with eThekwini and any other municipalities, particularly at this time, when we know after our summit that put it very clearly, and from all municipalities saying, we don't have capacity, we don't have money, we need help. And our infrastructure is not aging, it has aged. To say it is aging is to be very polite. It has aged to a large extent, gone far beyond its useful age, and that includes eThekwini. And we should be very hard at work in eThekwini, replacing that. It's something that we need to discuss with eThekwini. All municipalities in South Africa, including this one, they lose more than 40% of water. So even if you were to augment the water via Umkomazi, via Hazelmere, and any other scheme, and then you put it into the system, 40% thereof will go, more than 40%, will just go down. And therefore, it's a package, this thing. It has to be done. I want to emphasize, I don't think eThekwini will be able to do it alone. They need you, they require you. And judging from your language, we are very amenable to just be on that groove. And in any case, if you don't, I must indicate to you that you will have been overtaken by other business chambers and other business houses in other parts of the country who have realized this and have come forward clearly to say, let us package partnership and work with. In some cases, we already have projects that are running, and we would want to do that in eThekwini. Even if we were to join eThekwini, as we are preparing, without interfering with their constitutional legislative framework, which municipalities and SALC are very sensitive to. But the fact of the matter is that we have a crisis, and therefore we have to come to the party and work together. Now, on this crisis that is brought about by the storm, on Good Friday, we were here, among others with Minister Mbalula and Minister of Human Settlement. We took a little bit of a tour, especially in the western side of eThekwini. We couldn't go to the south. We couldn't go to, we did go to the north, Notongati. After sizing up the problems, it was clear to us that we were on a long haul. And we then established a war room. Now, which means we are there in that war room. Provincial government is there, eThekwini municipality and other districts are there. We meet every week. Now, we have identified a number of hotspots. One of them is a pollution arising from disrupted pipes or damaged pipes. It's a major, major concern that we are dealing with. And of course, for now, we're dealing with Otongati, which is quite a major area. After repairing quite a number of pipes, including your bulk in the south, which is now functional temporarily, while, as the mayor was saying. Ourselves, in terms of Umgeni Water, we're repairing the bulk one, with 2 aqueducts. But I just want to assure you that we are indeed hard at work, and from here we'll be looking at refurbishing that old plant together with Otongati, which means that some of you are realizing that you need to give a hand, and we are very happy with that coming partnership with Tongati Hulet. And no doubt that the problem in the north will soon be resolved. We just need a little bit of patience and a little bit of a number of interim measures which we'll be dealing with after this meeting, just to make sure that people have water. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Mkhulu. While I invite Minister Dlamini Zuma to, I'm not sure if you're going to do it there from there, ma'am, or in the come here, just 3 quick inputs which I've received, so that can be part of the record of the meeting. Mr. Shabir Chauhan from Al Barak Bank, well, it's really lamenting the crisis, saying time is running out and they're being lobbied to move to Johannesburg or Cape Town. Then Kobus from the Ilembe Chamber, he feels that Ilembe has been isolated because of the challenges with regard to the M4, R102 and P103. And then Mr. Ngema from NAFCOC, who is raising issues around the distribution of relief funds, feels there's too stringent requirements, timeframes are too short, and questions the exclusion of liquor traders from benefit on the unrest relief. Those are the issues that have come through. It now gives me pleasure to invite Minister Dlamini Zuma to address you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'll talk from here. Am I audible?
It's not here.
It's on the wall.
Can I?
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, all protocol observed. I just want to say that to assure business that these floods, more than ever before, require us to work together, not just as business and social partners, but also the three spheres of government. Coming to the issue that was raised of dual authority, with especially that involves traditional authorities, that is a more complex but not insurmountable problem. We think actually in these discussions we should include them so that they understand what we're talking about and why things should change, but we will be also engaging them. So we take it as a challenge that we must deal with. I think the President will talk about the Command Council, Economic Command Council, but it's in line with the district development model. So I'm sure it shouldn't be a big problem. And maybe, lastly, I want to also stress that as we build, we must build back better, taking into account the lessons that we would have learned with these floods, because the scientists do tell us that this part of the country is going to be wetter and is going to have frequent floods. So we have to ensure that we manage that risk in our reconstruction or rebuilding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Dlamini Zuma. I think many would not be aware that almost every day there are teams from national, provincial, and local who are working, being seized with the tasks and challenges before us. Now, the flexibility that I spoke about, I'm going to invite Mr. Moses Tembe on behalf of the Growth Coalition to make some short remarks before I request our Premier to round up this session.
Thank you, MEC, President of the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa. In the interest of time, as I will actually stand by the protocols that were observed earlier. President, we just want to reinforce our commitment to work with government and other social partners in rebuilding our country. On Thursday, I went all out to emphasize the point that if you look at the opportunities and challenges, the opportunities far outweigh the challenges, and we have to keep the hope burning on all South Africans to hope for a better tomorrow. I'm going to touch on issues that were not raised by my colleagues earlier, but issues that remain at the top of mind kind of matters impacting business. Having said that, I must also say that what was presented earlier by Nigel, Bongani, and Graham, it's quite to the point, and on behalf of business, thank you. It's a great pity that Minister Bheki, the Minister of Police, is not with us today. We just want to emphasize to you, reinforce the issue of security and safety, Mr. President. The rampant criminality becomes a huge issue for us. The issue of the forces of extraction, we truly believe that defeating extraction as the central organizing model of current economic behavior is central to our political and economic future. I want to jump straight to Minister Pravin Gordhan on the issue of Treasury regulations. We are of view that a huge investment could be unlocked in the private sector if we begin to look at some of the regulations we've raised with the Treasury, especially in KZN, around the funding of infrastructure, especially in the municipality area. We are of view that a public-private partnership model has got to be pursued much more actively. I want to come to Minister of COGTA. A burning issue for us as business is the professionalization of the public sector. We are really of view that it is paramount for us to begin to ensure that we create a very capable state, capacity development and transparency remain top of mind issues. If there is one issue we also need to pay more attention to is the issue of human resource development and the alignment of skills at the municipality leadership level in particular. And that issue, I must say that it is also exacerbated by the challenges raised by factional politics, which really is a matter that must be addressed quite decisively. We also are of view that at a municipality level, we need to create, or rather ensure that we create a culture of compliance and consequence management, and real auditing is quite critical. And lastly, to you, Minister Mbalula, we are of view that your department could play a critical role in positioning KZN as a gateway to the sub-Saharan and provide impetus in the integration of economy of Africa and intra-trade. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Temba. May I just give the last input that I've received on behalf of SAPI. They point out that they contribute 1 billion rand to the KZN economy. It is key to get the South Coast rail line up and running as soon as possible. This is costing the company an additional 10 million rand per month to move key raw materials by road. And this places an additional 400 trucks per week of timber and coal onto the road. I think the rail line between, not only that, the one between the harbour and Cato Ridge at 56 Ks, I know it is receiving attention. May I now then invite our Premier to firstly give an overall response on behalf of the province, and then to use that opportunity to invite our President to address us.
Thank you. I think briefly, Mr. President and all colleagues, we have learned from the engagement we've had and your views right now. Firstly, on the issue of planning and building for the future, I think Minister Dlamini Zuma has been very emphatic that we should build better, which requires that we build in terms of resilient infrastructure, but we must continue to work on environmental management. And I think we can unpack that going forward.
while Minister Cele on peace and stability, security and stability, while Minister Cele is not here, the Deputy Minister Matale is here. What we can emphasize is the needs for additional resources to build capacity. I think provincial we have managed to stabilize the system, and you can see that it is functional. But you find that at some point they are stretched with less resources, and I think from national, Deputy Minister Matale would want to emphasize that point. May I move to just a few issues? I think we take the point of building trust. Mr. Okono, you are correct, but we have been working hard to build trust. And from where we stand, trust should be cemented, one, around a common strategy and plan. Two, implementation of the plan, timers intervention, accountability. And I think we've been trying our best to do so. Not only we are responding to issues of eThekwini. I think for those who are in Pietermaritzburg, Melanie, you can confirm we've been there last month, and we're coming back to deal with issues concerning the business community, but the community in Pietermaritzburg. We're dealing with issues of Ladysmith and Utugela, and I'm sure those issues were raised with MEC Pillay, and he took them up with me. We intervened. Simitomo, Defy, and Nestle, we are intervening to ensure that there is stability, uninterrupted provision of water. Richards Bay, Mr. Werner, just Friday, we were going to come there with Minister Mantashe. But you will know, police are working to deal with issues of stability, investigation of cases. Government has resolved the tension in the traditional communities. We have done everything, but we will want also to see you investing more and going forward with the Zulti South. So responsiveness is quite important. Tourism is affected, but working, we see that there is work being done. The oceans in Umhlanga, Mr. Reddy, we hope that you will be able, as you are inviting us to the opening soon. But we also are keen to see the implementation of the Film City in Durban as championed by Anand Singh. So we are quite decisive in our work. As we agreed in March that we should have a provincial economic command council. We have discussed it. Just this week we were discussing also with the Planning Commission that how to deal with issues of decisiveness in implementation. And we are of a view that, like the President, he established a unit that deals with the red tape and all of that. We want to establish the crack team, where we enlist all strategic projects and we ensure that the implementation is followed every week, every month. Not that we get through the monitoring reports at the end of the year. So we will build that capacity in the provincial government. So we are all in this together, inspired by your commitment, but we are quite dedicated and determined to play our role. With that, colleagues, may I invite the President, His Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Is known. He has been the President of this country. He has led us on key interventions. I think we've had 3 investment conferences already, and some of you have shown the commitment. Hence, we are yielding a positive result. When SAPI says to us, move to ensure that the railway is implemented, we take that serious because we know that SAPI committed to expand its operation in the province, and they have done so. So that's why we take those issues with seriousness. The president doesn't need much introduction. He is known of the role he played in the transformation of this in the liberation of this country, the transformation during the negotiations and drafting of the Constitution. He has led us to stabilize the country, stabilize the economy, and we believe under his leadership, we will see this province and the country prospering. Let's welcome the President, His Excellency, President Ramaphosa.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Premier of KwaZulu-Natal Province, Mr. Sihle Zikalala, Mayor of eThekwini, Councillor Mxolisi Kaunda, President of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Nigel Ward, leaders of various other business organizations that are here, leaders of various entities of government who are also here, ministers, deputy ministers, MECs, civil servants, and ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting us to this very productive engagement. I also wish to thank other business organizations that are also here participating in this engagement as well. I'm really heartened to have been asked to come to this occasion to engage with you all. You represent what I would call the spirit of commitment, of hope, and patriotism to our country and the communities in which your businesses operate. As a business community, you have been through a great deal of challenges, and you counted 3, and I would say, actually there are many more. The challenge of unemployment also bears on your shoulders. The challenge of inequality and poverty is another. These are other challenges. It is also heartening to hear Mr. Tembe saying that the opportunities that abound in our country far outweigh the challenges that we face, and that we should really focus on those opportunities, and we should do so by collectively seeking to find ways in which we can build together and consolidate a social compact amongst us. I'm also pleased to have heard that the relations between business and government here in KwaZulu-Natal are really solid. You go to workshops together, you craft plans, and you identify what needs to be done. That is quite heartening to us. As government, we are firmly committed to work with and give the business community here in KwaZulu-Natal all the necessary support, also the resources and the technical capacity which we can get from yourselves to recover from the catastrophe that this beautiful province has gone through. Prior to traveling here, I met with respective ministers and deputy ministers and government officials to receive reports on progress that has been made in the multi-sectoral flood response and recovery plan. The KZN economy is a vital part of the national economy, and as correctly pointed out, it represents 16% of the GDP of our economy. The economic reconstruction and recovery underway across the country in the aftermath of COVID-19 cannot succeed without the swift, comprehensive and sustainable recovery of the economy of KwaZulu-Natal. Declaring the flood as a national state of disaster has really enabled us to mobilize more resources, more capabilities, technical expertise, which we have been able to carol from within government as well as the private sector within the various necessary timeframes. As business, your concerns and challenges are very specific, and we've had them all this morning, and ministers sought and did respond to a number of the issues that you have raised, as did our mayor as well as our premier. But of course, there will always be gaps, and these are gaps that we need to address together and to find solutions. Damage to key economic infrastructure such as roads, energy transmission and distribution, water and sanitation facilities, which you have spoken about, and the Port of Durban has had and continues to have a dire impact on your operations as businesses. It has been really sad to see some of the pictures of how the operations of a number of your businesses have actually been devastated. And today I got to hear that almost 34,000 people are affected. That is, workers would be affected by the damage that has been wrought by the floods. We are also keenly aware that the economy of KZN is still struggling to recover from last year's July unrest and the impact of the COVID-19. We have heard from Premier Zikalala and the Mayor and ministers on the progress that has been made in the restoration and rebuild effort. And as I said, there will always be gaps, but we can close those gaps as we work together. Sectors that power the provincial economy, such as manufacturing, retail, wholesale, distribution, warehousing, and freight, have been particularly hard hit. And the fact that 1,500 or so businesses were affected is a matter of great concern. And given the importance of the Port of Durban to the national and continental economy, restoring operations and rehabilitating damage to the port and associated infrastructure has indeed become a great priority and must be a national priority as well. We welcome the pace of progress towards restoring port road infrastructure and operational efficiency. This includes the terminal clearing, rail line, water draining and reopening stormwater jetting, and the repair of seawalls. We have been advised that the Transnet National Ports Authority has so far cleared more than 340 cubic meters of debris from the harbor, and I'm sure work continues. With regards to port traffic, capacity has been restored, and the port has handled more than 100 vessels since the 13th of April, and tugs are all operating at full capacity. Now, this I have found quite pleasing because I really got worried that we would be marooned for quite a long time without the port operating. I'm told that terminal operations are also back at full capacity with vessel offloading, loading operations, truck deliveries operating optimally as well. Now, efforts by Transnet to deal with rail infrastructure damage are also proceeding, although this is likely to take some time, given the extent of the damage. And the call and the ask by a company like SAPI for the rail line to be either restored or rebuilt is an important one because it costs so much more money to put goods on the road. Transnet is also engaged in a consultation process with communities who will be impacted by construction works because there are a number of dwellings on the identified rail reserve that will need to be relocated. Work underway to fix affected roads, especially strategic roads that ferry goods to the port, is proceeding at a good pace with SANRAL as the implementing agency, as Minister Mbalula also said. A number of road repairs projects have been identified with an immediate focus on the N2 and N3 highways, and the necessary systems, I'm told, are being put in place so that they are not delayed and they proceed as quickly as possible. Now, today here, we have been given a progress update on the restoration of some of the services, and the mayor also articulated that. ESCOM has also been assisting a number of municipalities, and that should speed up and carry on. It is also encouraging that water restoration in most of the metro is also proceeding. But as Minister Mkhunu said, we need a major overhaul, and the build-up of the wall of the dam, when it gets finished, is going to come in good stead indeed. So work there is also being done. Significant work has been done and is being done, as His Worship the Mayor said, to repair damaged water infrastructure, such as the wastewater treatment plants, pump stations, and reticulation. Now, the deployment of built environment professionals to conduct flood damage assessments and participate in the Joint Operating Committee has enabled us to have the necessary technical expertise put to service in affected districts. Minister DeLille, if she had had an opportunity, she would have given us a great deal of detail of exactly the teams that have been put together, and it's quite impressive from both the public sector as well as the private sector, teams with enormous skills, experience, and knowledge that have been brought to bear to deal with the damage that has been wrought by the floods here. This progress notwithstanding, challenges, we must admit, do remain, challenges that have a direct and serious impact on the provincial economy. The interruptions to rail has interrupted the delivery of exports to the port, with automotive and citrus produce particularly badly affected. The short-haul trucking solution to facilitate faster inward container movement is working well, but will put further pressure on traffic flows, particularly around the Bayhead Road. Whilst on trucking issues, you heard Minister Mbalula saying that negotiations are proceeding and should hopefully yield some good results with the trucking people. And I'm hopeful that this will indeed lead to a breakthrough, which our economy so sorely needs. Completing all the rail repair works that have been identified within necessary timeframes will also be very critical. We're encouraged that there are discussions underway with Toyota and the city of eThekwini on what measures are needed to restore the Toyota plant in the area where they operate to full capacity, but also to address what is needed to secure resilience for the future. Now, a great many lessons have been learned from what we have just gone through here. As government, we must now prioritize as we work together with regard to the integration of climate change and its associated impacts into all of government's planning. And it is in this regard that we will say, this is where we also need to work together. Because even as we plan, we don't plan what happens in the city, on the metro, on our own. We have other key role players. This includes what I would call climate-proofing human settlements, building climate resilience in the agricultural sector, and constructing climate-resilient infrastructure as well. We need a complete overhaul, particularly now that we know we are susceptible to climate change vagaries, both on the eastern seaboard of our country, as well as Minister Dlamini Zuma often says, on the western side where the droughts are quite severe. Our collective state of readiness for natural disasters has to be drastically improved, and disaster risk assessments by all provinces have to be regular and have to be ongoing. This disaster proved to us that we are not as ready as we should be. And therefore, working together, we need to put together measures, structures, processes, and a variety of initiatives to ensure that we are disaster ready. There will now be a clear expectation that municipalities, provinces, and departments should develop, should update as well, review and submit their disaster management and contingency plans to the National Disaster Management Council. Mechanisms to improve access to provincial and municipal disaster relief funding are being addressed. And Mr. Gumede has raised the challenge of dual governance structures, which results in either delays and sometimes derailment and sometimes a great deal of confusion in executing projects. I agree that we need to look closely at the manner in which our governance structures can best function in a cooperative manner. But as Minister Dlamini Zuma said, the traditional leaders whom we often just ignore when we have to deal with these matters need to be brought into the whole process so that they are also able to play their role. And if we can do so, we can possibly get rid of the challenges that we face in relation to these dual structures. Another issue also under discussion is the scope for provinces and municipalities to delegate certain disaster relief functions to well-capacitated institutions if they lack the capacity. And we have seen how a number of other institutions have been able to come to give assistance, and where there may be lack of capacity, we should look at the extent to which those can also be shared. All organs of state have to develop risk-informed disaster management and contingency plans that can be implemented at short notice. This will be done through the one district, one plan process that really underpins our district development model. We are encouraged by the efforts of the eThekwini Metro around early warning systems and to raise awareness in our communities particularly about the impacts of climate change and the extreme weather associated with it. Engagement with communities, especially around constructing dwellings in high-risk and flood-prone areas, is critical if we are to prevent such great loss of life in the future. But we also need to pay more attention on our town planning processes. And in this regard, we also need to upscale and skill a number of young people in planning processes, in town planning, and urban planning, and all those other disciplines. Because when we have such well-trained people, they will be able to raise the alarm a lot quicker when our plans go awry. We have agreed that our foremost priority now must be on helping the people of KwaZulu-Natal to rebuild their lives and to assist businesses in the province to get its economic recovery program back on track. And we welcome the efforts in this regard that are being driven by the KZN Growth Coalition, of which the Durban Chamber of Commerce forms part. And it is in this regard that I say I'm particularly pleased to have realized that the relationship between business and the government here in this province are quite good and progressive. When the flooding struck the affected provinces last month, there were dire predictions from many that we would slide further into an abyss. But the province of KZN, supported by a coordinated national disaster management effort, has shown its mettle. And we have shown that we can address the challenges, much as there may well be shortcomings. Some of the issues that you have raised demonstrate that there is still much to be done. But at the same time, we are indeed showing our mettle, because by merely being at this meeting shows that we are a people who are prepared to act together, to work together, to address the challenges. And this I truly commend you for. After the unrest in July, I convened on Zoom a meeting which was attended by some of you were in the attendance of that meeting, but there were quite a number of CEOs across the country that numbered more than 200 or so. And I was truly, truly heartened, because it was at that meeting where CEOs were able to say, we now need to pay greater attention to societal challenges that our people face, and should not only be focusing on the profit line. And they also said with one voice that we should all work together and ensure that we address the challenges that face our country together. I think we have made considerable progress, but there is far more that we do need to do, as I said. The toll on human life has been high, and we mourn all those who have died. Premier and I, earlier this morning, as I arrived, were counting that we are probably going to be talking about more than 500 people whose lives would have been lost in this province. Our thoughts are with those who have lost their homes and also businesses, and we would like them to be assured that every effort will be made to support them at this time, including some of those who feel that they are being excluded, like taverners and so forth. We need also to look at the way in which they can also be assisted. This meeting for me has been a valuable platform to engage on the urgent priorities for business in the province, so that we are able to recover and so that we are able to build back better. You spoke very articulately about infrastructure that is in bad shape, and you said very clearly, infrastructure has to be replaced. And clearly that is going to cost quite a lot of money. We now need to put our heads together and work on the suggestions that can come forward on how we are going to mobilize funding. And we need to be creative, we need to be innovative, and working together, the public sector and the private sector, we definitely can find ways. And we need to transform, yes, this province and the country into a real infrastructure-built area where we create a construction site. I traveled to the Middle East the other day to the show that they had there in the UAE, and I could see why the Middle East, or UAE, had been called the biggest building site in the world. And we can also live up to that. and have our own building site as we reconstruct and rebuild our country. And that is the dream that we should all aspire to achieve. Now, we have stressed that we are facing an economic crisis, and appropriate measures need to be taken to respond to it. And you have suggested that, yes, maybe we should have an economic command council. These discussions are ongoing as we move ahead to build that compact I spoke about during the State of the Nation, where I said we've got 100 days during which we can put a compact together. The discussions, the negotiations are ongoing. And of course, the media thought that we were talking about 100 calendar days. We were talking about 100 working days. And the working days calculation still gives us some time, but the discussions are ongoing. And the suggestion that you are making that we need that type of command council is a very good suggestion, which we will take on board. As I said earlier, the economy of KZN must be recovered for it to be an inclusive process that will affect the lives of our people here and contribute to the creation of jobs, and so that the jobs that are threatened to be lost through the floods should be saved and more jobs should be created. In conclusion, I want to thank the KwaZulu-Natal business community for all the support they have lent to the humanitarian effort since the floods occurred. A number of your businesses have stepped forward and have given our people support, and we really, truly thank you for that. Many of you have done so without being acknowledged, and I'd like to acknowledge you for all the assistance and the support that you have given to those of our people here in KwaZulu-Natal who have faced real hardships. There's a lot of work ahead, but I'm confident that working together, we will succeed. It is through partnerships and collaboration that we'll be able to recover and to rebuild in a manner that leaves no one behind. I thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that address. I think it'll give hope and direction that all the inputs that have been made will flow into the planning and decision making. I must say, Mr. President, on Monday, I know there were certain inputs that came that suggested people are